To the average Joe, this might just be a run-of-the-mill vacuum cleaner, but in Michael's hands, it becomes a crucial tool for cracking open safes. Michael removes the vacuum's air filter and silencer. Upon pressing the start button again, the vacuum immediately generates a tremendous noise. Just recently, the jailbreak squad acquired the government building's blueprints, and they're about to infiltrate the building to steal a priceless Scylla data card. A thorough investigation reveals the government building's security system is virtually impenetrable, with surveillance and alarms everywhere. Griffin's office is on the 10th floor, and his safe's 12-digit code is essentially uncrackable. The safe, made of 18 centimeters thick high-temperature resistant cobalt alloy, would take an hour to drill open, and the noise would be unavoidable. They concluded that stealing the Scylla data card from inside was nearly impossible, but Michael is exceedingly clever. He sets his sights on the office next to Griffin's. Once everything is ready, the heist officially begins. Don, using his Homeland Security agent status, leads the group to the government building's underground parking lot. Before leaving, he warns, "If you lot wanted criminals, get caught. Don't you dare say you know me." After closing the elevator door, to avoid surveillance and government personnel, Sucre dismantles the elevator button panel, turns off the camera, and sets the elevator to full mode to go straight to the 10th floor. Then, he crawls into the building's ventilation ducts through the elevator's maintenance hatch. The team splits up. Sucre and Bellic sneak into the storage room through the ventilation ducts first. However, just as Sucre is about to restore everything, a female employee suddenly barges in.
Sorry, I was just coming into... There's no more TP in the ladies' room.
We'll get right on that.
How about you get it right now?
But surprisingly, Bellic hands over a pack of wood pulp paper. They exchange glances, and Georgie, with a wave of his hand, decides to go get the toilet paper himself. At that moment, 2 drops of blood fall on Georgie's shoulder, fortunately without her noticing, but Lincoln accidentally learns of his brother's serious illness. As their mother showed the same early symptoms, their mother died of the disease at 30, and Michael turns 30 this year. On the other side, Don, sticking to the plan, invites an official from the neighboring office out to lunch and takes the opportunity to spray black dye at the entrance of his office. Soon after, Sucre and Bellic, dressed as janitors, use the pretext of a stain on the carpet discovered by chance to bring in a vacuum cleaner for cleaning. Meanwhile, Michael and Lincoln drop down from the ventilation ducts. They move a bookshelf on one side of the wall, behind which lies Griffin's safe in the neighboring office. Michael opens his toolkit, takes out a metal detector to locate the exact position of the safe, and waits for the others to start the vacuum. Sucre and Bellic begin to clean the stain in earnest. When they turn on the modified noisy vacuum cleaner, the secretary can't concentrate on her work due to the loud noise. Of course, she couldn't possibly hear any noise coming from inside the office. Lincoln cuts through the wall's insulation, while Michael mixes aluminum powder with iron oxide powder on the side. Lincoln wants to ask his brother how long he's been bleeding from the nose, but Michael insists it's a minor issue, as their priority is to get the Scylla. After Lincoln makes a shallow groove with a slotting machine, Michael sprays the groove with a mixture of the 2 powders. This triggers the famous thermite reaction. The aluminum powder oxidizes intensely under the high temperature generated by the slotting machine, releasing a tremendous amount of heat. This exothermic reaction can reach temperatures above 3,000 degrees Celsius, easily melting through 18 centimeters of cobalt alloy. Michael measures the depth with calipers, needing to drill another 16 millimeters to breach the safe's rear wall. Just then, Michael can clearly hear footsteps from the next office. It turns out that Krantz from the company has made a sudden visit. If he can hear Krantz's footsteps, it means the loud noise from this side can also be heard by Krantz. But the official from the neighboring office who went out for lunch is about to return, and with no way out, they have to take a risk. While the people in the next office start talking, Michael immediately has Lincoln continue the work. Almost the moment the drill starts, Krantz looks towards the wall from where the noise is coming. Fortunately, since most of the drilling was already done, it took less than 10 seconds to remove a neatly circular piece of the outer shell. Michael discreetly retrieves the second Scylla data card, instead of stealing the card directly, which might raise Krantz's suspicions and make acquiring the remaining 4 cards more difficult. Michael opts to copy the data using a receiver. However, copying the data card requires 2 minutes. While Michael is halfway through the copying process, Krantz suddenly asks to see the data card. Caught off guard, Michael quickly puts the data card back in its place, holding the receiver in one hand and the circular shell in the other. ready to reinstall it at any moment. Lincoln anxiously awaits a signal from Roland. Luckily, just as Griffin is about to open the safe with his fingerprint, he complains about working with Krantz for 15 years and still not being trusted by him. It was precisely this brief time difference that allowed Michael to successfully copy the data and perfectly cover up any traces of having opened the safe. Krantz takes the data card, checks it, and immediately issues an order. Henceforth, all 6 cardholders must carry their cards with them at all times. This is because an incident at the first cardholder's home has already aroused his suspicions. After completing the mission, Michael and Lincoln restore the scene, and Sucre and Bellic leave with the cleaning cart. The 4 reunite in the elevator and escape the scene in Don's black van. The jailbreak squad is planning how to acquire the 3rd data card. Suddenly, Lincoln spots an old acquaintance nearby, Teabag, whom they haven't seen in a long time. But how could Teabag appear here, dressed in a sharp suit? It turns out that since Teabag moved into James' mansion, he often studies a stack of documents carefully. These documents repeatedly mention a company called Gate, and James, under the alias Cole, is the top salesman of this Gate company, with a substantial bonus to his name. Teabag calls the company and finds out that Gregory, the boss, has never met James. Thus, Teabag set his sights on this bonus and directly impersonated Cole to arrange a meeting with Gregory, which is why he arrived here dressed to the nines. When Teabag sees Lincoln and the others approaching, he turns and runs, throwing a bird guidebook into a nearby flower bed. However, wearing leather shoes, he couldn't run fast enough and Lincoln caught him.
Hey, Teddy.
That ain't the Brothers Grimm.
Easy, Link. Remember, we need him. Now, what are you doing in Los
I was
Angeles?
thinking about maybe getting me a career in pictures. If anyone's got a right to be pissed, it's me. You put me out the pasture back in Panama. Left me for dead, which makes it the 3rd time I believed. So congratulations, you got yourself a turkey.
Where's the bird book?
Bird book? Where's the book?
A nearby security guard, seeing a potential fight, immediately calls for backup. Still wanted criminals. The brothers don't want to escalate the situation. After searching Teabag and not finding the book, they reluctantly let him go. After shaking off the 2, Teabag picks up the book again and meets with Gregory at Gate Company. Leveraging his exceptional eloquence, Teabag easily deceived Gregory and even secured himself a private office and an assistant named Andy. Andy mentions that this office was specifically requested by James, and its door number is also noted in the bird guidebook. Could this office hide some unknown secret? Teabag sits in his office, sipping coffee and chatting away, completely oblivious to a drop of coffee silently trickling down the side of the cup. As Teabag looks at the bird book on his desk, he suddenly notices a blue mark appearing on it. Realizing there must be a shocking secret hidden within this book, Teabag grabs a piece of tissue, dabs it in coffee, and frantically wipes away, soon revealing a pattern resembling a ladder slowly emerging. Just as he wonders what this could be, the sudden appearance of 2 people at the door sends shivers down his spine. It turns out that since the last time Michael met Teabag under the office building, he's had Sucre and Bellic sniffing around the neighborhood for any sign of Teabag. Their goal was precisely to get their hands on this bird guide. Sucre tempts Trishan with the promise of $10,000 if she provides a lead. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Teabag quickly grabs a fruit knife from the desk, ready to counterattack. Unexpectedly, Trishan does not seem to be swayed by money, claiming she hasn't seen the person in the photo. After sending the 2 away, Trishan looks meaningfully towards the office, leaving Teabag completely puzzled about her motives. Teabag thought his charm had won over Trishan, but it turned out to be a transaction in the end. Trishan demands a regular cut of 15% from Teabag's sales commissions. Otherwise, she would call those 2 back since she had saved their phone numbers. Caught in a bind, Teabag reluctantly agrees, as he has more pressing matters to attend to. Teabag spends his days studying the strange patterns on the book but can't decipher their meaning, until one day, a man with a menacing appearance suddenly shows up, saying nothing but placing a gun on the table.
You were supposed to deliver the item 2 days ago. Where is it?
Where's what?
I've traveled a long way, Mr. Pfeiffer. My patience is wearing thin. Playing games is not going to be good for either of us. Scylla, where is it?
This is the first time Teabag has heard of Scylla. It's clear that Feng Huan had some deal with James, but Teabag has no idea what Scylla is. Feng Huan bluntly states, "Give me Scylla within 2 days, and I'll pay you as we agreed. But if I don't see the goods the day after tomorrow, I'll blow your head off."
No problem.
Teabag so readily agrees because he realizes the sum could be astronomical. Even if he can't find Scylla in 2 days, he can just wipe his butt with the promise and vanish. Teabag firmly believes the bird guide is key to finding Scylla. He notices a page marked with an 8x10 square, thinking it's the office's floor plan, but after walking 8 steps as indicated, he discovers nothing. At that moment, he noticed a taped-off utility room in the office, so he snuck into it. Starting from the corner of the wall, Teabag walks 8 steps, knocking and tapping around, yet finds nothing. Just as he senses something off with the floor sound, Trishan walks in to warn him of trouble. It turns out Andy has discovered issues with Teabag's resume and many holes in his sales record, concluding Teabag is a fraud, and has already notified the police, who will arrive in 5 minutes. Knowing a police investigation would immediately expose his fugitive status, Teabag, albeit reluctantly but prioritizing survival, quickly wipes away all fingerprints he's left behind. After a brief farewell to Trishan, Teabag rushes out in a frantic escape. Once back at his hideout, he immediately packs up, ready to disappear, but just then, a formidable woman punches him to the ground.
Who the hell are you?
This is the 10th day Gretchen has been locked in the dungeon. She appears to be on her last breath from the torture, but in reality, Gretchen is slowly prying a nail out of the chair with her fingernails. For freedom, she's willing to endure even if it means staining the wood with her blood. Persistence pays off, and the day the guard comes in to change the urine bucket, Gretchen kicks him down and clamps his head between her legs. Then, the sharp nail is driven straight into his temple. Gretchen pulls out the key, unlocks her handcuffs, and tears off the tape on her mouth. A plan for revenge has already begun to take root in her heart. Dragging her bruised body, Gretchen arrives at her sister Rita's house. Looking at her bruised reflection in the mirror and recalling the years of dedication to the company, only to end up like this, Gretchen feels a deep sense of injustice. Her blue eyes blaze with anger. Vowing to bring down the company and make them pay a painful price, Gretchen smashes open a piggy bank hidden here. The guns and cash inside astonish Rita. She approaches a girl playing by herself, whose blue eyes are identical to Gretchen's.
You be a good girl, okay? Bye, Emily.
Hi, Auntie.
After leaving Rita's place, Gretchen, posing as James's wife, goes to the lost and found to claim James's belongings, but without a marriage certificate. Her request is denied on the spot. Gretchen doesn't waste words, simply punching him as a lesson for his refusal. She quickly grabs James's file bag, which contains a phone with an unread message from Gate Company. Gretchen finally learns of James's other identity. At that moment, Teabag, whose impersonation has been exposed and is preparing to flee, is knocked down by Gretchen with a punch.
Who the hell are you?
Teabag is tied up, and at this point, he can only divulge everything about how he impersonated someone and threatens that Scylla and the office of Gate Company must be closely related, and now only he can get into that office. If Gretchen kills him, they'll never get their hands on Scylla in their lifetime. But Teabag doesn't know she's a ruthless character. Gretchen pulls out a knife, slashes Teabag's arm, and then slowly moves the blade towards his lower half, threatening to cut it off and feed it to the dogs if he doesn't cooperate in obtaining Scylla. Teabag has no choice but to cave, marking the beginning of their official partnership in forming the Plastic Alliance. Meanwhile, Bellick got a call from Trishan at Gates' front desk. Turns out, with Teabag planning to flee, her chance at a sales commission vanishes, so she'd rather sell information for $10,000, prompting her to call. At this time, the jailbreak squad has already locked onto the third cardholder. The data card is important, and the bird guidebook is equally key to unlocking Scylla. Michael decides to split up. He, Mahone, and Bellick will deal with Teabag, while the others go to Las Vegas to steal the card from the cardholder. The trio arrives at the meeting place, with Michael sending Bellick to the rooftop to meet Trishan first. But when Bellick doesn't come down after a long wait, Michael and Mahone have no choice but to go up, immediately sensing something is off upon seeing them. However, at that moment, Teabag emerges from behind a car with a gun, revealing that Bellick and Trishan have been taken hostage and used as bait to lure them up. Just as Teabag is about to shove them into the car, the agile Mahone leaps off the platform. Teabag's arm, slashed by Gretchen, makes it difficult for him to hold the gun steady, forcing him to watch Mahone escape. Luckily, he has finally captured his deeply hated Michael and immediately ties them up in the mansion.
Just tell me what you want.
I want to make you bleed. I want to release the sinner inside. inside of me that got me incarcerated so many years ago.
Teabag recalls how Michael caused him to lose an arm in the first season, sent him directly to Sona prison in the second, and in the third, left him surrounded by guards. Teabag wishes he could tear Michael to pieces, but for now, Teabag has to spare his life. As with his intelligence, he's incapable of deciphering the secrets in the bird guidebook. Michael was equally curious about the connection between this book and Scylla. In just half an hour, he sensed the secrets hidden within its pages. He put the blue lines together, which seemed to look like a design for some place. At the same time, Michael discovered a piece of paper with bird illustrations that read Gate, matching the logo on a nearby cardboard box. He discreetly tucked the paper away. Soon after, Gretchen, lurking in the shadows, spotted Bellick's ankle. Realizing it was a tracking device, she immediately called Teabag, instructing him to remove the gadget and then move the hostages to another location. Sure enough, it wasn't long before Mahone, having obtained the tracking system from Dawn, stormed in, only to find the place deserted. Fortunately, Mahone discovered a paper crane left by Michael, a symbol he used to communicate. Upon unfolding it, he found it was the very piece of paper with Gate written on it. Being a smart man himself, Mahone rushed to Gate Corporation to set up a defense. Meanwhile, Teabag had moved them to Trishan's house, and Michael had completed the blueprint, which showed that Gate Corporation was adjacent to the company. Starting from Teabag's office could lead directly to a part of the company, possibly related to Scylla. To find out, he had to check the site himself. Teabag doesn't know what Scylla is, but if so many people want it, it must be worth something.
Because you can smell that Scylla money, can't you? That's what you're in it for, just like me.
To gain Teabag's trust, Michael admitted he joined the fray for the money. Teabag informed Gretchen that Michael planned to go to the office. Gretchen stated that as long as she could obtain Scylla, whatever Michael did was acceptable. She also took care of a problem for Teabag by showing him the trunk of her car, where the bothersome Andy lay. In front of everyone, Gretchen cold-bloodedly strangled Andy to death, removing an obstacle. After clearing the way, Teabag confidently led Michael to the office. Following the clues from the bird guide, they lifted the floorboard to find a hidden passage below. This time, Teabag was wise, learning from the lesson at Sona prison, and had Michael go first.
Just like old times, pretty.
But regardless of Teabag's antics, he could never escape Michael's schemes. Just as they descended, Michael jokingly pulled open a metal door, suggesting he'd lock Teabag inside, almost making Teabag burst into laughter. At that moment, a figure approached silently. In an effort to get closer to the cardholder Howard, Sarah employed her charm, approaching him with alluring grace. Unexpectedly, Howard barely gave her a second glance, uttering a few polite words before leaving the scene. For the first time, Sarah felt a sense of defeat. Was it her looks, or was Howard simply a gentleman? The bartender finally cleared her confusion.
Don't take it personally, you're not his type. Right before you sat down, he asked me if I liked the party.
It turns out Howard had a very peculiar taste. Thus, the task of approaching cardholder number 5 ultimately fell on the muscular and handsome Sucre. Although reluctant, Sucre had to sacrifice himself for the sake of the team. Sauntering to the poolside, his well-built and sturdy muscles shone under the sun, particularly dazzling. Howard's heart fluttered at the sight of such a specimen, and before Sucre could even remove his vest, Howard had already moved closer. After a fierce internal struggle, Howard finally mustered the courage to strike up a conversation. With some persuasion, Sucre felt his skin crawl, but eventually, he gritted his teeth and followed Howard into the room. After a few drinks, Sucre was on an emotional roller coaster. As Howard opened the safe to retrieve some cash, Roland began copying the Scylla data on his end.
Filling up nice. Sucre must be in close proximity. Getting oiled, most likely.
Howard slowly approached Sucre, the atmosphere turning ambiguous. Meanwhile, Howard shared his story. During his service on the battlefield, a stray bullet hit him in the groin area, 3 square inches up the thigh, rendering him impotent ever since. Sucre was completely dumbfounded. Then why did you bring me here?
Mr. Villalobos, I'd like you to meet my wife.
I'm Alexa.
Turns out, Howard enjoyed live shows. While the data had been successfully copied, Lincoln and the others were still anxiously waiting, fearing for Sucre's safety. An hour later, Sucre returned, all smiles, handing the receiver to Roland. Sucre sternly warned that if anyone dared to speak of this, he'd bash their head in. With the mission accomplished, the group prepared to return to Los Angeles. Claiming he needed to use the restroom, Roland headed to the arcade machine, intending to cheat for a quick profit using the receiver. However, due to his criminal history, the casino staff had been watching him and expelled him, confiscating the only receiver in the process. But without the receiver, how would they copy the last Scylla card? Back at the base, Michael and the others heard that Roland had lost the receiver and told him to go back to his room and not to leave and never to take part in the operation again. But Roland was still holding a grudge, so he secretly used his computer to find out the phone number of Wyatt, one of Krantz's top assassins, and sent him a message. Wyatt had been investigating the whereabouts of Michael and the others but struggled due to their new identities provided by Dawn, leaving him clueless about the escape team's location. Picking up the phone, Wyatt saw a message that listed how much Michael's address was worth.